we'll start with the invocation today, and we'll take it forward from there.
Saiji, you're on mute. Yeah.
Sadgurubhyo Namah. Sadashivasamārambhāṃ Shankarācārya-madhyamāṃ Asmadācārya-paryantām Vande Guruparamparāṃ. Partháya pratibodhitāṃ bhagavata nārayanena svayam vyāsena grachitāṃ purānamunina Madhye Mahābharatam Advaitāmrutavarshinīṃ Bhagavatīṃ Ashtādasādhyāyinīṃ Ambatvāṃ Anusandadhāmi Bhagavad-gīte Bhagavad-deshinīṃ.
Thank you very much, Saiji. So if you can all keep yourself in mute so that it becomes easier for us to communicate. And I thought I'll start by looking at what I have seen. What I have seen in LinkedIn so far are extraordinary. I felt the kind of reflections that all of you have written, and the time that it took, and the insights that you have shared, and the way in which you made the connection, I feel we have started remarkably well. It looks like there is a deeply thoughtful community that we are dealing with, and I congratulate and I appreciate all of the people who are here and who have raised some wonderful insights. I took time, several days, to go through and try to comment on some of what I have seen, and how maybe we can go even deeper, how we can make it applicable to ourselves, and how some of what you are saying, I think I love that other people are commenting on each other. Each of you are looking at each other's insights and questions and then taking it forward. So if I want to elaborate on some of the themes, one thing which I felt I should say is that each of the area that we have picked, there is a lot of wisdom that you are bringing in. I'm consciously using the word wisdom because data is, okay, there are 140 people signed up. Last time there were 79 people. Right now it is 60 people. There are so many women, so many men. There is a lot of stuff that we can bring in. And most of the people, brought in certain slokas, certain commentary, certain reflections. And as some of you promised, you are able to comment on Hindi, you are able to comment it in various languages, from Jnaneswari, from Bhagavad Gita, from different Swamis who have been commenting on. So I think I really love that you have been able to bring the richness to what has been said. So because we are talking about this being a Gita Karma Yajna, we are focusing on what we can do. Let me take directly the areas that we picked up. For example, communication. the essence of communication depends upon the quality of listening and the art of listening. As some of you commented, the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, we do not have any comments by Sri Krishna at all. It's actually, the comments are all by Dhritarashtra, Duryodhana, Sanjaya, Arjuna, and various things like the conch, that different people were blowing. So the first chapter, what we can learn about communication is patience
Gita
and listening. How different can we all come in to mute, please, if you don't mind? When you come in, please come in with mute. Or hosts, can you keep when people? I'll unmute myself. Okay. So the first lesson, it looks like many of you have picked up and commented on, is patience, listening, and how different characters are actually listening in a different way. I noticed, Sudhir Mardikar, you commented saying something like Dronacharya and Krishna exhibit patient listening despite knowing the outcome, highlighting the importance of letting other people express themselves fully. I thought this was very, very good. So similarly, several of you have identified that most important part of first chapter is how various people are listening, when are they responding, how are they responding, what is it that they bring in when they comment about the quality of how they are paying attention to and how they are reacting to and responding to. How Duryodhana comments to Drona and how he talks about Bhishmacharya, how many of the Kuru kings and Kuru teachers and Kuru people first blow the conch, then how the Pandavas and other people do. So there is a lot about letting other people express fully and then we listening. So this kind of active listening, this kind of paying attention to the communication is very, very important in the fast-paced post-AI world that we live in, where the true engagement can become secondary to haste and presumption. These days, we want to raise our hand and we want other people to listen to us. So that means when other people are speaking, we are preparing for what is it that we want to say rather than what is it that other people are saying. So the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita teaches a lot about communication and what kind of communication we need to participate in today. The second area, which many of you commented on, and I think extremely important, is we want to communicate, we want to listen because we want to be in relationships that are meaningful, that are enriching, and that are actually developmental. So as many relationships go, whether it is familial relationships, whether it is work-based relationships, whether it is societal relationships, there are always going to be conflict on one side and compassion on the other side. So many of you pointed out the necessity of navigating these two, navigating conflicts with certain integrity, certain kindness, certain compassion that is essential, and that some of you have commented. Now, if I were to highlight what Pradeep Kumar had written, conflicts with family members are inevitable. Isn't that the truth? Actually, more we, Sundays come, Saturdays come, it becomes even more. More time we spend with each other, more conflicts come to the forefront. And Pradeep continues, I should be mentally strong to take the side that supports truth, justice, and honesty. This sentiment Pradeep expressed underscores the need for upholding one's own values, especially in challenging interpersonal dynamics. The key to relationship is actually holding the space for others to express themselves, and to express themselves especially in the area where they feel that there is something missing or there is a conflict. Because to the extent they feel free to express their emotions and their differences of opinion and their point of view, more you can listen. That compassionate listening that we talked about earlier will create the space. See, relationship is about creating space for deeper, meaningful communication and having the other expression, having the space for people to express honestly and truthfully. So that is something that we will talk more about, and you will, as you go through the chapter, it becomes even more meaningful. The third area, the career development. In the first chapter, the career development is all about, at some level, in the first chapter, as we see, it is about who do you respect, who is mentoring you, whose mentorship theme resonates strongly, because there are different relationships in the first chapter that we see. The relationship of Dhritarashtra to his sons, Mamaka, Pandavas, Chaiva. So the idea, how he expresses, as some of you have pointed out, and the relationship that he has with Drona, how he tries to emphasize Drona, but at the same time insult him a little bit. And the way in which he brings his confidence in Bhishma, and at the same time talking about how we need to protect Bhishma. So if you try to look at each of their comments and how Arjuna respectfully want to go to the middle of the battlefield to look at both kinds, and at the same time he looking at it and listening to the Krishna for guidance by expressing whatever he thought. I think Gagandeep really puts it quite nicely. He says, seeking clarity, guidance, and confidence from the mentor, that the word mentor, from mentor I put it myself, before embarking on any new endeavor is very, very important. Of course, on a regular basis, coaching and mentoring talks about on a weekly or on a very frequent basis, you seek guidance from your mentor or seniors or coach. Some of them, the Gagan's reflection mirrors the Arjuna's quest. Why is this Arjuna is having quest? It is the direction he needs at a critical moment. That means in our career, it doesn't matter where we are, we also need to seek and value the counsel of other people. I think that is something, seeking guidance. It doesn't matter what level you are in, you humbly requesting and asking for suggestions and asking for guidance is the first step that is most important in career guidance. Quickly, if I go to the last three, lifelong learning is essence of education, because many of us are in different age groups. The degrees are important to a certain extent to start our career. Sometimes certificates and certain executive education, certain extra courses, civil services, as some of participants like Akanksha are preparing for. If you look at the value of education and learning is something that is critical at every stage of our life. So, to a certain extent, what Kalyan put out in the holistic undertaking that we are taking. He says, asserting my point of view was like taking an aggressive stand, especially when you are in conversations with other people. But he says, I learned that it requires courage to fight my own demons. We acknowledge the conflicts of other people and acknowledge conflicts with family members also, but it takes a lot of courage and it takes a lot of self-awareness to recognize that I have my own demons. The Kurukshetra war is not just being fought outside, it is also being fought inside every single day. So education requires a large amount of learning, even more importantly, unlearning, because learning will make incremental steps in educating ourselves. Unlearning helps us to go deeper into developing my own self-awareness, my own role in the conflicts, my own leadership that I need to take as I go forward, and how do I grow becomes important, as it is said in the in the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Then let us talk about leadership and what is the essence of leadership that we have seen from the first chapter. As some of you have commented, like Sanjay comments, because he is an executive coach, he talks about in the darkest moments, the faith in something that transcends us is always available to find a way. My feeling is that what Sanjay said, his insights align with the narrative where Arjuna confronts his doubts, his fears, and ultimately he will, as we go forward, will find guidance. But at least right now, there are a variety of good opinions. That is extremely important to point out. When we are being leaders, there are two things that from first chapter I take away. One is clarifying what is my purpose. Why am I doing what I am doing? Second is, how vulnerable am I? If purpose and vulnerability do not go hand in hand, arrogance will take over very quickly. It is extremely important, just like Duryodhana realized and Arjuna realized, everybody around us are actually leaders. They are kings. In the case of Kurukshetra, all of them are kings. Many of them are superiors. Many of them are elders, teachers, grandparents, uncles, are the people who have decided to fight for them, either on Pandava side or on Kaurava side. So whether you look at Duryodhana's comments or Arjuna's comments, they acknowledge they are leaders of leaders. They are not leaders of followers. They are not like sheep who are following us. If we can learn that everybody around us, whether we are team members, whether we are parents, whether we are, the leaders of organizations, other people are actually having large amount of wisdom we need to seek. When we seek that and when we are open, honest, and vulnerable, then it becomes extremely important. The last point I'll make before we go into small groups is the self-development. Obviously, the entire self-development is at some level the essence of Bhagavad Gita. That's the reason why the Bhagavad Gita, part of what is called Prasthanatrayam, that is the one essence of knowing self. The Brahma Vidya, they talk about Upanishads and Brahma Sutras and Bhagavad Gita are three of the most important documents. When we say Upanishads, the Upanishad, there are 10 Upanishads plus Brahma Sutras plus Bhagavad Gita are considered to be essential for us to understand the true nature of ourselves. Why is that important? Because inner harmony, as we see in the first chapter, when inner harmony is not there, anxiety in the context of Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra and even Arjuna that they express in the first chapter is very essential for us to really pay attention to. Dr. Aurobindo, in commenting, he says, the ultimate goal of any human being is to be in a state of nirdvandva, freedom from dualities. I think the way in which Aurobindo commented, it invites us to look at, to seek inner peace and resolution through continuous self-reflection and alignment with higher principles are going to be extremely important for us to really find growth and development as we go through the next 18 weeks and also get deeper into Bhagavad Gita. So the inner harmony is something that you may want to pay a lot of attention to. So far, I have seen extraordinary insights and really deep thinking that many of you have shown. And I encourage you and I welcome you to continue that kind of introspection and that kind of reflection on what each of us are writing, thinking about. I already am really excited about the quality of it. And when I have a chance, I will try to bring in like the top 5 or top 10 perspectives from in each of these areas. We will cull, and probably some of your facilitators, when you go into small groups, you might also want to look at in these 6 areas, plus the women's area, youth, what they can take. If you can look at it, and when you go into small groups, begin to dig deeper into yourself and begin to reflect on what is it that I have taken away from this morning as well as past 1 week. And once you have the small group conversations, prepare to report back, and we will have smaller comments and some other thing we can do. And I'm looking forward to each of you going into small groups, having about half an hour in each group to discuss. Facilitators and some of you will take some notes, and when you come back, I look forward to what you reflect on and we'll take forward. So thank you. Back to Kalyan. So we will get into small groups and move forward. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you had good, meaningful conversations. How about if each group can give about 3 minutes of what you had, some highlights. If there are any insights, if there are any questions, if there are any other comments which you want to make, if you can make it within 3 minutes, that would give us the ability to respond to and listen to everybody. So, okay.
Sir,
so Nilanjan raised his hand already. Nilanjan,
yeah,
I'd like to go first.
We were in the group for progress in the workplace, career progression in the workplace specifically. And yes, the discussions did center from a generic perspective on the reference of identity that we already discussed in the first shloka of Mamakaha, how the identity varies between Dhritarashtra and Arjuna, wherein he is looking at both sides of the war as his brethren, whereas Dhritarashtra is still being a king, looking at only a narrow-minded section of the Kauravas as his people and the Pandavas as others. Primarily, what came a few points or a few highlights that came through during our discussion were the need for continuous reassessment and communication till the last moment of action. Because of this perceptive approach, wherein the same situation has a different view for one person and a different view for the other, there is always a need that till we start with an action, we keep the channel of communication and reassessment open. mostly in the workplace, once we get into a project, there is a urge to, or I would rather say a desperateness to get in and start performing and delivering, and we lose out on the preparation aspect of it. So somewhere it did come out like, what's good for me may not be good for the organization, and what's good for the organization may be something that I can accept and live with. So we did have an experience and an example to this, wherein the concept of a European company that decides not to do business with Russian companies because of the war, and the European company has an Indian subsidiary which does a lot of business for the Russian firm. So either you close down the Indian subsidiary, or you stick to your, this conflict arises, and that's where communication helps us move forward, and kind of clears out the clouds. That was one highlight which came, and the second highlight was that the need to be assertive. I mean, Kalyanji had also written it in his post, but there are people in workplaces who enjoy closeness to the top. Either they are relatives or they have some sort of affinity, and they abuse that by leveraging that in terms of their communication. So at different points, it's really important for you to put your foot down and be assertive if you are true to what you are doing. That was a highlight. And the another interesting point that came up was that Krishna didn't choose Arjuna, but it was actually vice versa, and Arjuna chose Krishna when, the scene prior to the Gita, wherein Krishna is sleeping, and Arjuna and Duryodhana are at his head and feet. Arjuna chooses Krishna but does not choose his army. So I think it was important to note that it's not just the mentor who chooses the mentee, but the vice versa. You need to choose whom you have to work for and whom you have to take guidance from and walk the path. So I think these three highlights were predominantly coming up front. While concluding, one quite important point which came was that there is a need to be transparent. Whether you are in a workplace, the need to be transparent, but first to yourself. I mean, not get flowed into the communication that's coming, but be transparent and acknowledge your own reality, and then start moving forward. Yeah. These were the 4 points, sir.
Yeah, very good points you are raising. Manager chooses in the workplace his or her employees.
Yes, sir.
But you choose whom you want to coach or who is your mentor. So that's an excellent point you are making. Leaders choose other leaders to mentor them and guide them. But managers look for employees who work for them. So that's a subtle and important difference. So are you being a leader or are you being a manager becomes a subtle and important difference. So that means in workplace, the Bhagavad Gita message I'm taking away, and I'll just make one point and then we'll move to the next group, is recognizing, am I an order taker or am I an agenda setter? If you are continuing to be an order taker from the European company, which is telling what Indian subsidiary has to do, you may have to do it from a managerial perspective, what is good. On the other hand, if you are an agenda setter, there may be something that you can create that doesn't necessarily conflict at the top level, but there is something that you can do as a leader that opens up different doors that would be very important to pay attention to. Thank you for that. What we will do is we will quickly keep moving with different groups first. I'm sure there are questions that are coming up based on what each of you reporting, as well as some of my comments. We will take them up in LinkedIn group and as we go forward, because in a 90-minute session, it's a little tight, it becomes. So Jahnavi, you had a hand up for reporting for your group, I take it, please.
Yeah. Hi. So my other name is Deepti. That is what I have enrolled with. So just to clear the confusion, I'm saying that. And I was facilitating relationship group. And there we have like different kind of perspectives that have come up and also a few questions. So I would like to share the perspectives first and then the questions. So according to someone in the group, is like relationships are two ways. It's just like how body organs have to interact with each other to have the communication, going on for the body to function. And in the same way, the relationships have to have that kind of a communication and, and a meaningful relationship with other individuals for a better society. And also according to him, it is like we should put others first, and then comes us. And according to another group person, for her, it is like how Bhagavad Gita is in relationship to me. That is how the relationship has come. Why I should have relationship with Bhagavad Gita. So if I cannot relate to Arjuna, then there is no point in doing or making this practice. That is how a relationship is coming up with this. Like, it's like I, Arjuna, and the external world where you have conflicts, dilemmas, and griefs. And then how do you, for some you have choices, for some you do not have choices. So how do we navigate through this? It's like a two-part to that relationship is what is her take on it. And there is another person, Mamata, and for her, again, relationship is to do with a God. So what kind of relationship is what she was exploring, whether it's a fear, respect, vulnerability. The relationship with the God is what she's trying to explore. And then she realized that we are very insignificant. And her questions are, how do we surrender to him completely? How do we stay out of expectations and how to hang on to the practice from the Bhagavad Gita every day, whatever the takeaway that would be. And these are the questions and her relationship. And then there is KK. And for him, it is like we are all playing multiple roles, just like how in Bhagavad Gita we have seen, like the relationship, there are multiple roles. So each role demands different kind of outcomes and how do we manage? So especially he was talking in a corporate setting, like how do we go with these disagreements in the relationship? And what he would like to understand is like the dharma is not prevailed is in the current age and scenario, and how do we work and progress with the dharma? That is what he would like to understand. If I've not put it correctly, Mr. KK, please correct me and please add to this. So if this is what he would like to understand, and these are the summary and the quick this thing about, and most it's also a relationship to the self. This is what from the relationship group. Yeah, thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Janvi. There are 2 points which you brought in, very important to touch upon. We will go as we do the Bhagavad Gita more and more. I'm sure there are so many extraordinary people in this group. Some of them will come out, but I'll just point one thing and leave. I think in relationships, looking at each other, bhakti is the way in which when we talk about God, the translation of bhakti with respect to God can be brought in relationships as love. Like, so the best way you can translate bhakti is the love that we demonstrate with each other. So if you look at that, how do I relate to my God? If you translate it as how do I relate to people who are in my life, whom I love and whom I cherish their relationship, how do I deal with them? If we can bring it, it becomes very powerful. In doing so, there is one trick which, obviously in Bhagavad Gita, you will notice how the relationship with between Krishna and Arjuna changes from chapter to chapter to chapter. You will notice, especially as we go into the second chapter, which is the next one, you will notice that Krishna will play very, very different roles. he provokes, he challenges, he cajoles, he requests, he asks, he tells. So, when you love somebody, you are going to do what is called Sama, Dana, Beda, Danda, Upayas. All the four of them you do to communicate and connect with other person. But the key you want to remember is, are you connecting? Are you coming out of the relationship that you and I have? That means relationship is in the middle between you and between the other person. Just like Arjuna took his chariot to the middle between Kurus and Pandavas, and from there he started his journey. We have to go from my perspective and your perspective, get to the middle and inquire into that, what is the right perspective for this relationship to flourish. That would take it to a lot more meaningful step. Okay. Next, we'll take it to the next group. Who is next? So go ahead. I think Aruna had a hand up and then Asish. So we'll go. I take it that you two are representing two other groups. So Arunaji, please.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I represent the group actually where we have taken, how do we take Gita insights to the youth? And when we talk about this, actually, like, it becomes in such a way, all the 6 themes that has been identified for this discussion, it might act as a kind of a horizontal when you're talking about youth, women, Indians and abroad as a kind of a vertical. So that could be a kind of a overlapping points that, again, we would be able to apply for this particular segment of youth. That, again, I just want to submit it as a first observation. The 3 key takeaways actually, or, the discussion points which we would like to highlight here is, the earlier Gita gets into one's life, it is better. And that when we are talking about youth, because, right now, actually, there is a more of an isolation, the more of, the me and mine is there, rather than actually like, how is it that actually, if we are able to bring in Gita earlier into one's life, I mean, I don't want to use a word youth, but how is it that you'd be able to bring in Gita earlier into one's life? So that, they have a clear definition of what is success. How do you define success? Am I just going to take the role models actually, like, who are really projected in the social media and again, who are considered to be successful? Or is it really the real role model? So the second point is, the first one is actually taking Gita to the, the earlier the better. That was the first one. Then how do you take it? We need real role models who are able to really project or, bring out the success which they have had by having Gita as their companion. It is not actually like, the typical role models what we see, but these are the people whom actually like, should be talking to the youth, who would be able to really take them the essence of Gita and how was it that the Gita really made a difference to them. And the main message from Gita is, hey, you are your own friend and your own enemy. You may be an underprivileged person, you may be anybody for that matter. But you know what? Your life is with you. Whatever you do actually like, takes you there. How is it that you would be able to take that, bring these role models at an early stage who are able to project the Gita as their companion? That's the second one. And the third point, but not the least, actually, why is it that these are important? As I said, we discussed actually like, there has to be a kind of a belonging to the belonging and connect, whether to the ancestors, to the root, to the culture. All these things are to be really brought as part of the Gita study so that, they are able to really find a sense of a belonging and rather than a kind of an isolated behavior. These 3, and we had some more couple of points which I'll just post it in the group, but we just want to highlight these 3.
Excellent points. I think I'll just highlight saying the belonging, especially when we talk to youth, it is extremely important to recognize, are we creating a space within which people feel they belong? The children get into cliques. Youth like to belong to a group where they are considered to be important. So when we talk to youth, do we talk like as adults, we know what is best for you, you better listen? That Gita group can only go so far. So that means the teacher and the taught, the God and the worshipper, parent and the child does not create belonging. It creates a boundary, a safe boundary. There is a big difference between creating safe boundaries. That means we will ground them. We will provide you. We will support you. We will take care of you. You are safe here. That's okay. The next step is the culture of the organization, the culture in which they feel their values are honored, they feel loved, they feel connected. That becomes extraordinarily important. So I think the belonging is at some level key to connecting at the heart level. I think whether it is youth, whether it is women, if we can connect to their hearts and help them to say, our hearts are open, then automatically their hearts will open. I think that is probably the key that I'm taking. I think the vulnerability, as some of you have commented so far, I think the vulnerability of an adult, vulnerability of a male, vulnerability of the senior people becomes actually a magnetic attraction. It will create a magnetic attraction to make other people to open up, to belong, and to connect, and and love. I think that is where the bhakti concept in relationship, especially youth concept, that will come up. Thank you very much. Ashish, you have a hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I would also like to thank Chanchal, who is facilitator for our group leadership, and giving me this opportunity to present on behalf of the group. So we are 10 people in our group today, and I would like to share some points of each of them so that everybody feels expressed. Lakshmi and Karina, they both had a common experience. Lakshmi is working for a family business advisory, and she has to chance to work with large family business. So she sees she's experiencing Mahabharata at workplace daily. Where the leader is blind, loves their family, favoritism. They see this entitlement mindset amongst the next generation and first generation leaders. So they are blind to their children's entitled mindset, basically. So what she gives as an action point here is that practice gratitude and stop having the entitled mindset. Karina, on the other hand, also had a similar experience, but she very clearly put out that you cannot eradicate evil, but we can choose to not to be a part of it. And knowledge cannot be given; it must be taken. So we must be prepared to take it. Because Dhritarashtra she says that Dhritarashtra was also a blind king, symbolic that he was blind to the realities and he was attached or infatuated to his sons. So, and she's also surprised to see Arjuna leave his bow and arrow with the mindset, mind distressed with sorrow. So this is no different than what a leader faces, in life. To the point of entitlement, Atul was quickly there to point out that this cultural change is coming up. He comes from San Francisco Bay Area and he has visited few countries, and he sees that the sense of entitlement in business is now going down, and that's a good change he has observed. Bikram, he brings about his points, saying that from the chapter 1, as a leader, 360-degree assessment of the strengths and weaknesses is very important. Standing on a seesaw, balancing between results and relationships is important. Duryodhan looks from the lens of ego. Arjuna is looking from the lens of relationship. Also, the knowing and doing gap exists. So the leader must understand why somebody from the team is knowing but not doing it. In this case, Arjuna's was the same conflict. And the point which he also shares, Bikram, is that active listening, as it is spoken, by Prasad sir also in this. Rashmi feels that just like Arjuna, she also has felt this in her life, to give up, let go, not asserting herself. And then in the hindsight, she feels unfulfilled, and she thinks that she could have become a warrior, but she could not. So the vulnerability part over here of a leader is very beautifully brought out by Rashmi. For me, the leader is an
Which
epitome
group
of
are you in, Ashish? What is the name of the group?
leadership.
Leadership.
Leadership,
Okay.
yeah.
Yes.
So as a leader should be an epitome of righteousness, as we discussed, that even the first two words of Bhagavad Gita, that is Dharma Kshetre Kurukshetre, is actually a definition of a leader, where Kshetra, if we symbolize it to a human body, and Kuru is to do, that is perform actions, and Dharma is righteousness. So every step, performing actions, right actions, and creating a field around is definition of a good leader. He is a epitome of righteousness. In the situation of chaos, that is a challenge, or we have seen the chaos in the chapter 1, a leader must know his position in the midst of chaos and make the team aware about it. And the third point was that even the best of the leaders are vulnerable. I'll bring out Gagan. Yeah, I'll bring out. Yeah, sorry,
no, I think we have 3 minutes is over because 8 o'clock is coming up. So I just want to tighten the thing because we have still 2 more groups to report. Okay. So what I would like to say in this is leadership, as you are pointing out, you yourself are demonstrating, even the way in which you are articulating, somebody else has facilitated, they asked you to lead, which is, so that means in your group, leadership is already beginning to demonstrate. That means people are sharing. I'm sure in your groups also, each of your groups, you are going to do that. I think that's a very, very wonderful characteristic that shows leader is not the person who is entitled and they will have the right, they will report, they will take it, and they become the control mechanism, controller of some of it. Second thing that you are bringing in is entitlement goes with the management. But if you want to be a leader, several times in various organizations, a person who has no role, responsibility, maybe the person everybody goes for advice. So leadership does not come from top down. It actually comes by what you are contributing to other people, how you connect with other people, how you add value to other people. So some of the wonderful things which you talked about as family business, or how in various kinds of things it comes down to, you need to look at yourself as, in my life, I am the CEO. I am the CEO of my life. When I look at myself, I am the leader. My family is where I demonstrate leadership. My workplace is also a way in which I need to demonstrate, but the kind of leadership in the workplace, the kind of leadership in the family, the kind of leadership I need to demonstrate in the community may be different. Am I able to see that as a leader, I need to demonstrate different kinds of leadership behavior and leadership values in different kinds of contexts? Am I aware of it? Am I being sensitive to the context? Am I being actually sensitive and concerned about developing and evoking leaders within my group? Those are some things, if you can pay attention to, things will move a lot further. We'll take it, already we are a couple of minutes up, so I'll go to the last two. Please, Anand and Deepika afterwards.
Yeah, thank you. I represent the communications track. Yeah, we had a very good conversation. Initially, we started with sharing with the first round of sharing, and in those, the key things that we talked about were the importance of active listening, and also how there are different styles of communication that we saw in the first chapter. Asking the right questions was another thing that came up, and the clarity of thought in asking the questions, and about having a clean space and the clean questions also came up, and we discussed those aspects. Then we got into two interesting areas of discussion. One was around okay, when we need to have this a clean space and clean questions, so how does one get to that space when one's mind is clouded, right? So we got into a discussion around that. And the second area of interesting discussion is in a office setting, when in a meeting multiple people are trying to talk. So how do you hold your space? How do you communicate? How do you get your point across and stop people that are trying to derail things? Right. So we had some conversation around that as well.
Excellent. Like something which I found is, if you want to have a good communication, sometimes it becomes extremely important to recognize what are the roles that different people can have. So, you know, a fanboy perspective is very good, because people will always clap whatever you are doing, people will appreciate. But while you feel good at the heart level, you don't learn very much from the fanboys, because they will support you whatever you are doing. They will say, they are like, yes, yes, yes. But on the other hand, we also need to look at, can we bring devil's advocate perspective? That is what we call competitor perspective. If we can look at, please tell me, what is the flaw in this logic? What are some of the things that competitors can break our strategy and take over our breakfast, eat our breakfast, as they call it? If communication, if we can ask and make sure we think from, what is my perspective? What is my fanboy's perspective? What is the perspective of the person who doesn't care about any of this and who are going to beat me down and who want to take over this leadership position, their perspective? If we can think about like that, then it becomes very rich. Whatever we are communicating, we will communicate from multiple points of view. I think the essence of communication is listening, because as we said earlier, listening grants speaking. The quality of how other people will speak depends upon quality of attention and listening we are doing to each other. And that active listening is the key. Maybe, we are in the first chapter, but let us think about how do we gain and how do we present and how do we pay attention to different points of view that other people may or may not have, but important to have. Okay, thank you. Deepika?
Sorry, Prasad, before we close on the communication topic, can I add one small observation in our group and the question that we had as a group to this conversation?
Please do. And we'll, please, by the way, some of you, please forgive me. We're going a little bit over, for a few minutes over, but I hope it is okay. We will close the next one and end. All right. Thanks. Please.
Yeah. So in Bhagavad Gita, right, the communication was indeed very smooth, respectful, even midst of a war, impending big war that was going to come in, right? But in real life, the characters are not so eloquent. What I mean is, in a real meeting setting, there are dominators in the room, right?
Correct.
The distribution of characters are not like in Gita, where you have an Arjuna, you have a Krishna, you have a Dhritarashtra, you have a Sanjaya, right? In a room, you have all dominators, right? All of them try to put their point in. You address the point about listening. That's a great point. But what do we do in a situation, real world situation, where everybody is trying to be dominant or everybody is trying to be passive and they don't talk, right? So we come across both the scenarios. That was a question that we wanted to ask as a group in this bigger group and seek answer.
See, ultimately, Kurukshetra war is happening in each one of us. It is not like we have a Krishna out there, we have a Duryodhana out there, we have Arjuna. It is not like we are Arjuna all the time or we are Krishna all the time. So you brought a very important point, Pawanji. Like there are in the world, real world, there is a lot of domination. Actually, the mind space and attention is what everybody is seeking. Even when we are on a social media, who is the influencer, who is dominating the conversation, whom do we listen to, becomes a way in which metric is used for noticing whom should we pay money, whom should we promote, whom should we give position, all of that. In this world, what we need to look at is why we want to communicate. The ultimate purpose of communication is to influence, right? So the idea is, how do we influence other people? If the room is full of dominators, sometimes the way in which you listen, the way in which you pay attention, and the way in which you look at each other, and the way in which you actually silently contribute to that can actually speak volumes. For example, if a dominator starts speaking, you know that is not, then let us say the moment he starts speaking or she starts speaking, you get up to go get water. Or you suddenly start turning towards your screen and start typing out, or you open up your phone and start looking at something. It doesn't, they may dominate and they may raise their voice, but the moment you stop paying attention to them, it will irritate the hell out of them. Forgive my language. But the key is, that means they are dominating, but if you are not dominated by it, you are breaking their rhythm. So what you may want to do is think about, as we go forward in the, you will see actually how Gita, how Krishna, even in the second chapter, my request is for you guys to start second chapter right away, start commenting on it as quickly as you can. And because it's at 72 slokas, it's a large chapter and there are lots of important lessons. I hope different people pay attention to different parts and bring up some of this. Notice how even Krishna's dominating ways, Krishna tries to even insult him right up front. What the hell is this? What have you done? Are you a man? Are you a king? He jokes at him. He laughs at him. He, kind of does all kinds of things. How does Arjuna respond? If Arjuna does not do what Krishna wants to do, it doesn't matter how much domination that Krishna can demonstrate, it is totally ineffective. So you might want to think about it and say, what are silent, different ways of showing how you are influencing others, how you are being influenced by others? That is something we all need to pay attention to very quickly. So we'll take to Deepika ji and then we'll try to quickly close. I apologize for 15 minutes over, but maybe we need to say that 90 minutes is a little too tight, but hopefully you guys can keep 15-minute margin next time. Okay, please continue.
Thank you, Prasad sir. I think the moment we talk about Gita, time and space is
Yeah.
is a mingled identity. So it doesn't really, we are not linear anymore. So I am very, I think personally, I and so many of us are really okay, even if we exceeded our limit.
Thank you.
So I think we had a very deep and rich session with all of us. And it started with a great question, just becomes the crux of the first chapter, that clarity in times of dilemma. Like, how do we get that clarity? How do we decipher that fine line between Atma Samman and ego? And how to identify those boundaries and make decisions for the best interest, for dharma, for the larger picture. And I think this is where we took a turn towards this understanding the whole concept of self and dharma, which are really not mutually exclusive. They are one and the same. They both are vectors and instruments carrying each other, where self is more about the soul identity rather than the roles that we play. It's not the sense of doing, as we were talking about. We are human beings and not human doings. So our sense of being is what is self at the soul level, at the energetic level. Everything else is very carnal in nature. And dharma is nothing but pretty much the same, where we are talking about the sense of what it is, the state of what is, and which is why they both have to go hand in hand. And only when there is this beautiful amalgamation of the subjective and the objective mind, that is where we are able to decipher what exactly dharma is. And this is what Arjuna suffered, which was clear in the first chapter. And this attunement process where we are elevating ourselves and trying to attune to our higher self, that itself is Gita. Gita is the yoga. So how we talk about yoga, Gita is nothing but that yoga shastra that is there. And because this attunement process is such a messy thing, there's so much of efforts that go. That is why we keep coming back to the point where we lose clarity. We are not able to make decisions. There are 200 voices in our heads, everything together, and then we are not able to choose which one to do, because finally it's the voice that we listen to is the path that we take. And how do we get to the point that we listen to the right voice of dharma? And Krishna, this is where Krishna created through his silence, through his deep listening, he created that space for Arjuna to actually express, to explore. Because from where Arjuna came, his upbringing, everything, he was a very intellectual being. He was an intellectual seeker. And that intellectuality actually went against him. It was much to his disadvantage on the field of Kurukshetra, because there he was attached to the whole sense of the concept of the cause and effect. This is what the intellectual mind does. And, if I do this, this will happen. Oh, I'm not going to do this. And then going into the whole...
If I might interrupt for a minute.
Yes.
What group are you representing?
I'm so sorry. We were in the self-development group.
Good. Thank you. So,
sorry. I'm so sorry.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And this is where, because he had that increased attachment to that cause effect, it was difficult for him to maneuver. And he was the person of attention to details. So for him, a person who's intellectually channelized, he will go into the details. But the person who has a broader perspective will go to the larger picture. And that is where Krishna was coming. This is like the yin and the yang on Kurukshetra, where he was coming and providing him that space. And also we were very excited to discuss about this.
Maybe we should stop right there, Deepika ji.
Okay.
We are a little bit
I think
over.
I have last 2 points. If you may allow, I will conclude.
Please. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Please.
So I think this Arjuna's whole aspect of understand his way of doing was through the less pain is better than more pleasure principle. Okay, यहाँ कम दर्द हो रहा है, ये करते हैं. यहाँ it's okay, pleasure नहीं मिलेगा, larger picture नहीं मिलेगा, तो चलेगा. And I think this is where I feel the whole seed of exploring himself started. And I think his whole repression, his emotional outburst, everything came out because that space was created by Krishna. And I think this is where we ended at that, to understand that even to come to the point where we know where to draw the line, to know our boundaries, the line between Atma Samman and ego comes from the first step of understanding what I am rather than who I am.
Well,
so this is what was the crux of our group. Thank you so much.
See, you brought some very, very important and a beautiful articulation of the dilemma and also self-development. There are two key things which we need to remember. We talk about self in the context of self with a smaller yes, self with a larger yes. The entire Bhagavad Gita conversation is moving from the smaller yes to larger yes. Smaller yes is Arjuna. Larger yes is Sri Krishna. And the same thing in our life. We need to look at it and say, by the way, the smaller yes doesn't have to be Arjuna. Sometimes our own Duryodhana comes out. Our own Dhritarashtra, the blind king in us, speaks when we talk about our children or our pet themes or pet people, like in the other groups, other people have commented on. We show our prejudices and we show our entitlements, we show our perspectives. The development of the self, if you were to call as the self-development group. So in this, the larger self is actually not even present. Krishna doesn't appear in the first chapter. And this chapter is called Arjuna Vishada Yoga. So the key is to recognize, to the extent I am not able to discover and touch the grief within me, if I'm not able to embrace all of myself, like warts and all, if I'm not able to accept and embrace all of myself, instead of being a self-critique, I need to actually recognize I'm not just the greatest warrior, I am also a person who feels deeply empathetic to all of them, and I can be completely confused. I prepared all my life for this Kurukshetra war. When I come to Kurukshetra war, what do I get? I become self-pity. In the second chapter, he talks about Karpanya dosha apahata swabhavaha. Because of the Karpanya dosha, this self-pity, apahata swabhava, my swabhava itself has become removed. So, we will talk more about it in second chapter. But the key it comes down to is, who are you being? Like, our colleague Raghu Anantanarayan says, when you are doing what you are doing, what are you really doing? That is the question that comes up in first chapter. Of course, that question itself, Raghu says, came out of the third chapter, but we need to think about this week as you go out, think about and say, when I'm doing what I'm doing day after day after day, in relationship after relationship, what am I really doing? What is my inner agenda? What is my inner action that I am promoting? Then you will understand your own, the self, the identity, the ego, the individual perspective that you are bringing in. So pay attention to that. And as we go into second chapter and third chapter and all of that, we will elaborate a lot more. So first, discover and embrace all of your smaller self with a small s. And look at in each of your relationship, in your workplace, in your family, when you are talking to your kids, what role are you playing? Are you playing Dharmaraja or Dhritarashtra or Krishna, Arjuna? How are you playing? When you are with your colleagues, what role are you playing? When you are with your bosses, what role are you playing? With your friends, what role are you playing? If you can understand who you are as an agent, and in doing what you are doing, what is your interior motive that is driving your action, then when we go towards the later and later chapters, this becomes a lot more richer. So with that, I think we will end today. So we have gone quite a bit longer. So thank you for your kindness to stay longer here. But I'm looking forward to your comments and reflections. I will also try to write something, like a summarizing some of what you call points that you brought. And maybe from, like one thing which you may want to do is, what have you taken away from this session? You may want to comment right away on the LinkedIn. And then second chapter comments will come off a little bit later, so that whatever we did 90 minutes today can become some richness. If you want, I'll wait till I listen to all of you on that particular one before I write a broader blog that can express to other people. By the way, each of you are welcome to write and reflect on whatever is happening already. You can put in your own groups or expand and think about. And if you write like that, please connect it to the what we are doing and put it in the LinkedIn in this private group, so that we can read what is coming out of your wisdom and your experience as well. Thank you very much. Let us end with the invocation, and I'll let you get back to what you have on your plate. Saiji.
पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदम् पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः
Thank you very much.